Also, I have the wrong episode number here.
It's not episode 399?
No.
It's 400?
You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA. You know ID in the town all day. ID in the SEA.
Hello and welcome to episode number 400 of the fabulous Peltoncast. I am your co-host, Kevin Pelton.
And I'm Tristan Carasino. We did it.
We're coming to you. We did it, Joe. We're coming to you in separate locations. I'm in Seattle, Washington, home of the four-time WNBA champion Storm.
And I'm coming to you from Renton, Washington, future home of Chip Kelly and your Super Bowl 48 champion Seattle Seahawks. That's right. It's the Rain Man edition of the Peltoncast, though. Somehow we actually made it to 400.
It's also, it occurred to me as I was looking at this, it has to be the Sam Haggerty edition, because normally we do like the last two digits is the uniform number, but it's got to be for zeros.
Resetting to zero.
We're resetting to zero. It's the Sam Haggerty edition,
wow.
The Boy Benjamin edition.
You know, the people said we'd never make it past 378, but here we are, still standing 400 episodes later.
They said that? I thought it was a notable milestone when we got to 365, one for every day of the year. 400 doesn't mean as much to me as that.
You know what was incredible was this is our 400th official episode, and we actually did 400 emergency pods last week.
It only felt like 400 emergency pods. But believe it or not, we have gone a full week between recording podcasts. No Seattle sports teams have hired, fired, or seen their head coach leave.
You have gone this many days without an emergency podcast? How many days?
It's like that is a good.
The Peltoncast has gone like 8 days or something. It's maybe even a little bit more.
I mean, I think it's 9. It was Sunday to Tuesday.
Okay, there we go. The Peltoncast has gone 9 days without an emergency podcast. Hurry up, Seahawks.
We have not had to reset the counter. It does not seem like the Seahawks are going to hire a coach anytime soon. Some teams are choosing coaches, but the NFL has intentionally slowed down this process so as to not disadvantage the coaches whose teams advance deep in the playoffs. And it seems to be working as they intended thus far. Shouts to Ben Johnson.
We'll talk about it later.
Oh, that was you were much more down about the process.
Ben Johnson.
I know what it's about. Yes, you're much more down on things than I am. All right, well, let's start
I'm really not happy as a Seattle sports fan right now. I'm just straight up not enjoying this.
I think you should leave sketch. I'm not having fun here.
I'm really not.
I'm straight up not having fun.
I'm straight up not having fun. Like, this is, I feel like, did you declare that somehow recently, like for the Huskies, that it was the greatest week in Seattle sports history? Because
I did not.
Do you know how much fun I was having like not that long ago?
I mean, I came across, I had to go back to the Husky game notes to double check their starting offensive line, as it was low those 2 weeks and 1 day ago when they played in the national championship game. It was 15 days ago. They played in the college football playoff championship with Kalen DeBoer as their head coach. This is a true fact. You can look it up.
I don't buy it. How many emergency podcasts have we done since then?
Way too many.
I think if I could pinpoint my happiest moment recently, just over, not like an individual moment. This isn't like beating Oregon or whatever. Just like overall contentness as a Seattle sports fan. I think you have to go back to New Year's Eve morning. So like 10 a.m. New Year's Eve morning, way back in 2023. In that moment, the Seahawks still had a pretty good chance of making the playoffs. The Huskies were on the precipice of playing against Texas in the college football playoff. I think that was the last moment that I was generally overall content as a Seattle sports fan. And then the Seahawks lost that game. Huskies won. We were happy. And then they canceled the college football playoff. We're into that moment. Like, in fact, they didn't just cancel the game. They canceled the whole week.
They canceled the sport of college football.
Yeah.
I was undoubtedly happier after the Huskies won the semifinal to get to the college football playoff championship.
But what I'm saying is contentness overall, just being content. Like, there were obviously moments, and like you could go back to the moment of beating Texas, or even the relief of that final play against Texas. But now just everything is tarnished. You know what I mean? Like I look back, I see the like Roma Dunze poster in Lucas' room, and I'm just like, I think everything that I think about, and I'm like, maybe we should have lost against Arizona State. This is what I was talking about when you could just do these things in your head where you're like something good happened, and you're like, but maybe something bad should have happened. When I did my bold prediction about how we would look back after losing to Michigan, so content in that moment. By the way, we would look back at when I predicted that we would boldly beat Michigan. And by the way, my bold prediction about Will Rogers looking a lot better than yours about Austin Mack. And uh, about in actuality, this is the better win. We may still say that because it's like, well, now Jed Fish is the coach, but you just never know how you're going to get to a place.
We talk about an
But-
important Jed Fish thing before we get into this.
Absolutely, we can.
He
I need Jed Fish. I need this to work.
I think we all need this to work. I agree.
It's like you just came off a breakup that was pretty bad, and you're like, if this one doesn't work, I just don't know, guys. Things are about to start getting real weird if this one doesn't work.
No.
There are some fish tanks at the Bass Pro Shop that are looking pretty interesting.
He was at the Staples Center. No, I'm sorry. He was at, I was still going to call it the Staples Center.
Crypto.com arena.
Crypto.com Arena tonight to take in Lakers Clippers.
There we go.
He was featured on the TNT broadcast for an exceedingly long time. Like they had an extended conversation.
About Jed Fish.
Jim Jackson pointed out that I believe is it Scotty Graham is the new running back coach.
Okay. They were down to talking about running back coaches.
Well, apparently he and Jim Jackson were roommates at Ohio State.
Really?
They Scotty Graham's senior year there was the 1991 season. That was Jim Jackson's final year. 1991-92 was his final year at Ohio State. So they overlapped there. So he's now got a UW connection, Jim Jackson.
There we go.
Yeah.
That's kind of incredible that they talked about Jed Fish. The Lakers and the Clippers were playing in Los Angeles, and
I
they had
can't
an extended conversation about Jed Fish.
I can't remember which other celebrities they showed before him in the montage, but Jed Fish was the hammer of the celebrity man montage and got like the camera on him for like a solid minute. as
Bro,
they were
that's
talking
my
about
coach
this.
right there. What's
That
Kalen
is-
DeBoer doing right
That
now?
is huge for recruiting.
Kalen DeBoer is busy choosing Austin Mack over the best quarterback in the country. It's like
Ugh.
not too good for Ohio State, but too good for Kalen DeBoer. We'll see. It's gonna be ugly. It's gonna be ugly.
All right. Well, now let's get into it. Starting with
You never know how you're gonna feel in a moment until it happens.
it's the Peltoncast golden rule for a reason, folks.
Also,
Starting-
that's why you don't build statues. Do not build statues of Kalen DeBoer.
You're coming around to my
Oh,
side on
oh,
so
I-
many things. Not
I
Will
really am.
Rogers anymore now that that news is broken.
Oh yeah, Will Rogers, quarterback savior. We have to look at his QBR from 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
Only 2021 QBR is valid. All right, maybe this time I can get through this line. It's starting with our search for Seattle's best IPA, which has taken us this week to Burien
Oh,
and Burien's own brewery, Logan Brewing Company, which I've driven past like dozens of times, not that far from Treat Cookies and Stevie's Famous in the heart of Burien on 152nd.
the heart of Burien, deep from the heart of Burien.
But have never tried any of their products. And I have here the Arcane Eye West Coast IPA with Citra and Mosaic hops. Cast your arcane eye and explore flavors of berries, tropical fruit, and citrus in this West Coast IPA. Gaze into the realm of Citra and Mosaic and find out why these two titans of hop flavor come together in an exceptional IPA. It's delicious beer. You can see it in our eyes.
Okay,
So I don't know. This may also be interesting.
I've
being
never
part
heard of this
cult.
brewery.
Yeah, it's right by the library there. so-
Don't gaze into the realm of the Citra hops for too long. You might go blind.
One of the challenges I found, so I was at the Beer Junction earlier today and
Okay.
was sitting there Googling various IPAs in their case for like a solid 15 minutes. Because one of the things I've discovered with a lot of these new breweries, like I don't know what we came up in, like, is it like beer 3.0 maybe? Maybe
Sure.
beer, at least
Yeah, no.
American beer 3.0.
Well, I think you have to divide it as craft beer. I don't know if you can just say beer in general.
Okay. It's like craft beer 2.0. Craft beer 1.0 was like Pyramid, Red
Yeah.
Hook, which we still have not gotten to.
Henry
Really?
Weinhard's.
I think there was a pyramid sign. I just recently started watching Northern Exposure.
I was gonna say I really thought you were gonna say pyramid scheme.
Oh, no, pyramid
You're
brilliant sign, and I was feeling
you're
nostalgic.
watching Northern Exposure?
Yeah,
You finally caught up to me from 15 years ago?
I have. Did you know that they
Wow.
shot it in Roslyn, Washington?
Are you joking?
I'm
Okay.
joking. I was aware of that. I had to double check exactly. I knew it was close to Cle Elum. I had to
No,
double
it
check
wasn't.
exactly.
You were trying to figure out whether it was Ronald because it's in Roslyn, not Ronald. You don't even
No,
know what Ronald is?
I don't
The
know.
city
about-
right next to Roslyn. It's Roslyn. Good God.
It
You
looked
know-
like
You know nothing about the geography of Central Washington. That's
Um,
apparently the only thing I do know.
weirdly. You know what the thing is? They're all north of Toronto. It appeared that there's like a festival in the pilot episode, and it appeared that was maybe Lake Cle Elum, but I've not actually been there. I just know from your stories about Lake Cle Elum.
I do not remember from watching Northern Exposure like literally 15 years ago, but I had all of the DVDs way back in the day, and they came in a wrapped in a sleeping bag.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah, Northern
go-
Exposure, underrated classic, kind of lost to the sands of time. Clearly not for you though. It was funny. There was a kid I was giving a ride to, one of the children's friends, and he was like, "Oh yeah, we had to go do this thing down in Raymond," and I was like, first off, I've never heard of a person being in Raymond. And to me, I was just like, the only reason I know that is because the sign is Raymond and PL.
Raymond and PL?
Yeah, on I-5. Those are the signs that are together.
Oh,
Am I wrong about this?
I don't
I
remember that.
read it every time, Raymond PL. And it's such a bonker sign to read.
Is it PL? I think that's what I've always thought it was.
What was the city in Marbella, Spain?
Yeah. After we talked about overpronouncing things,
know.
and then we pronounce it
Marbella.
Marbella. Truly impressive. I don't know. I'm not seeing a Raymond close to PL here.
Wait, really? Am I wrong about this?
Oh, I guess they are the same exit off of I-5. Yeah, they're
Okay, I was
not
gonna
that
say,
close to
I'm
each
pretty
other.
confident. I know about Roslyn and Ronald, and I know about Raymond and PL. Thank you.
This is on Route 6.
The
It
Brick
looks like it is
Tavern.
PL.
though,
Yeah.
the Brick Tavern. Have you been to? This is what you have to do now. You watch the show. You do a pilgrimage to the. I can't remember what it's called. But I've been to the Brick before.
What about the Roslyn Cafe? That's the pilgrimage, isn't it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm ready. I have even discussed it. Next time I'm headed to Eastern Washington, I'm going to Roslyn for sure.
Oh,
Anyways.
Roslin's great. Roslyn, honestly, very fun place to drive through.
The point I
It's-
was trying to make, it's very
That's it. With the Roslyn Cafe is where the Brick is the bar, right? That's what it's called. Am I right about this?
I didn't catch that. But the Roslyn Cafe is the one with the mural outside of it that is very evident, and they had to come up with a
you know what?
backstory.
I think it's called the Brick is the real name. That's why I'm confusing this. The name of it is the Brick in
I
real
see.
life, and it's the Roslyn Cafe in the show. There you go. We got there.
No, they're different locations. There's a Roslyn Cafe and the Brick Saloon. They are different locations. So, once I drive through Roslyn, I'll have more deets
It
on
is
this.
the oldest bar in Washington State.
Really? Okay, that's
Yeah.
fascinating. Wow. Okay, shouts to Roslyn. Shouts to the Roslyn listener if they exist. Anyways, the
Or
point
at
I
least
was
the person who's driven through it.
the point I was trying to make is we're used to the idea of breweries having like their core year-round beers and then seasonal beers on top of it.
Mhm.
And whatever stage of the craft brewing it was, 2.0, 3.0, they kind of operated that way. And
Yeah.
now I feel like they've dispensed of that entirely. And you cannot tell from their website. Like they just have tap lists of what they have on tap. So it's impossible to tell whether it's a seasonal or a like year-round beer, which is really messing with this search.
Yeah. Also, breweries in general, they're just flying a little too close to the sun. I read a Reddit thread about what is the thing that millennials are going to kill, or Zoomers, whatever, the generation that's coming after us is going to kill. And craft breweries is the one that I saw like near the top. I was like,
Well,
there is an era, and the era is fading.
look, us nostalgic Gen Xers or Gen Xers, millennials are gonna keep it
We're
alive
the
for a little
millennials.
bit.
Zoomers are going to kill the thing from the millennials.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this beer is good so far. We'll see how it rates.
All right.
as we continue our search for Seattle's best IPA. Our this week's toasts start with congratulations to the player you just mentioned, making you sad, Rome Odunze, who was named the Division One FBS Academic All-American of the Year by College Sports Communicators for his prowess not only on the field but in the classroom. Shouts to Rome Odunze.
Wow. There we go. Are we going to talk about the Mel Kiper mock draft later? No. Yes.
We can discuss it now.
Let's talk about now. That's it. Let's talk about the Seahawks section.
Okay. I mean, being that concerned about individual Seahawks draft picks.
No. I don't really care about that. It was mostly just seeing Rome Odunze. Like, there is steam for Rome being like a top 5 or top 6 pick.
Oh yeah.
I think that would be the highest pick since Entman. Am I wrong?
Reggie Williams was certainly top
No.
10.
John Ross was 8 and Jake Locker was 8. Those are the two highest ones that I can remember. But I think there's a good chance that Rome goes higher than either of those. I'm pretty sure that. And Shaq Thompson was in the teens and Reggie Williams was like 10. So I think there's a chance that Rome Odunze is the highest drafted Husky since 1991.
All right, so the Huskies have only had 2 players ever drafted in the top 6 of the NFL draft. Guard Rudy Mucha in 1941. Shouts to Rudy Mucha, who ended up playing 3 years in the NFL, although the league, his career was presumably 2-time NFL champ, so he's got that going
There
for
we
him.
go. Nobody talks about how players drafted in the top 6 from Washington haven't had the best NFL careers. And then Emin. Right?
Emin going number 1. So yeah, he has a very good chance to be the highest drafted player since Emin.
There we go. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially I think at this phase of mock drafts, skill players tend to be higher and maybe over time they fall a little bit. But like seeing that many receivers that high, but I think there's a good chance that he's going to be the number 2 receiver taken.
I don't know if I agree with that. Quarterbacks generally rise. I don't know about wide receivers.
I mean, I looked at that mock and it was a lot of skill players in the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 3 quarterbacks, 3 receivers, I think is the top 6. I don't think there's a non.
Well, maybe people had watched the playoffs
and realized that you need skill players.
Maybe they were aware of trends in football.
I don't think we're moving to an era where just skill players are going to be drafted super high. But then Brock Bowers is also like number 7.
All right, next toast. Congratulations to Tacoma native and UW commit Zoom Diallo, who was chosen for the McDonald's All-America game. I think he would be the first McDonald's All-American for UW since Isaiah Stewart and Jalen McDaniels. So, Jaden McDaniels. So.
Speaking of things which are going to make me sad in the future, what college do you think Zoom Diallo's actually going to play for? Ironically, might it be Arizona?
We'll see. You know, he mentioned Hop in his commitment. He also talked a lot about Will Conroy. So,
yeah, but is the job going to Will Conroy?
I don't know, but
it ain't going to be Mike Hopkins.
It's looking less likely with each succeeding game, but we'll talk about that a little later in the pod. Congratulations to former Husky running back Deontay Cooper, who was named running back coach at Idaho.
There we go. This is a Beerian heavy episode. Coached at Highline High School.
That's
right?
true. I forgot that he was at Highline. Nice.
There we go.
How many years of college football did Deontay Cooper end up playing?
Oh, his eligibility seems like nothing compared to modern times, right?
I mean, true. It was more notable back then.
People are going on their like literally 9th year of eligibility now.
You'll recall he finished up with 1 year at San Jose State after the 3 that he played at UW. Deontay Cooper was, I believe, recruited by Sark. He might have played this. He was definitely recruited. Yeah, he was definitely recruited by Sark. And also, he enrolled at UW at the start of the winter 2010 quarter, and then had his first injury in fall camp in 2010. Sat out all of 2011, all of 2012 before finally getting on the field in 2013. So,
It's awesome to see Deontay Cooper get this job, and hopefully it's just the first of many.
I would think so. All right, next up,
Hopefully one day he could be mentioned on an NBA game.
He's gonna have to have known Jamal Crawford, I think. I don't know that any Huskies are going to be color analysts on national games. Congrats to former Mariners third baseman Adrian Beltre, who was one of 3 players voted to the Baseball Hall of Fame as part of the 2024 class. No surprise there. Beltre did not have the greatest Mariners career. He will not be going into the Baseball Hall of Fame wearing a Mariners hat, sadly, but someone who the front office actually was really wise to spend a lot of money for, just not a great fit for what was then Safeco Field, now T-Mobile Park. But during his career in Texas, everyone realized just how awesome he was. All right, lastly this week, a reminder that we are coming up on the conclusion of Randy's quest to visit all 79 Taco Time Northwest locations. That will conclude with a live taping of Talkin' Taco Time this Saturday at the Rainier location at 12 noon.
Wow. Randy's freaking doing it. 2024, the final location for Randy. Are people invited to this momentous occasion?
They are. Hopefully not too many people, because, you can only fit so many people into a Taco Time Northwest. But if the listener wants to come have lunch and hear us to some
Meet
degree record this
Randy, a meet and
podcast,
greet with Randy.
for sure, yeah.
Meet Randy live.
Presumably, Randy will be bringing the Taco Time trophy that he got as part of the Superfans commercial.
I would prefer to talk to Randy over any of the rest of us. So
You've often made that clear that you'd rather talk to Randy than me.
oh yeah, that's my spin-off podcast is me and Randy talking about donuts. It would be huge.
Wow, it's been almost exactly a year since the top 5 donut expose, where we learned that the ones at QFC are smaller than the real top 5 donuts.
Is that a year ago? No way.
I think it was in February, but we're coming up on a year. All right, we have the return this week of Coach's Corner.
Wow, we're already into it. Okay. Just so I didn't do Coach's Corner. Season has started. I mentioned this team that I'm coaching, which is first grade City of Renton basketball. Kind of a wild team. I knew this going in. So I didn't do Coach's Corner in week 1 because my child, Mateo, almost hit somebody and I had to run on the court and pull him off. And then after the game, the coach for the other team was like, you need to get these kids under control. Which the concept that this is almost like an additional week of Coach's Corner. The concept that me or any person could get this group of first graders under control is laughable. But we're back at it week 2. Week 1, a pretty nice W for the kids. In, of course, the games that they do not keep scoring. Week 2, we come out. We're feeling confident. We had a good practice. I did a lot of half-court offense. There's no positions, of course, but we did a lot of half-court offense in practice. And I was like, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good about my dogs. I feel like we might run the table this season. Just like looking at the other teams, scouting them. That was the confidence that I had going into this. So we get out there. I'm like, setting up the lineups and stuff like that. I think I've mentioned this before. For kids graded up through like 3rd grade or whatever, they each wear a wristband for who they're defending. So you pretty much need to, it's a little bit loose sometimes. If somebody's driving to the hoop, somebody else can defend them. But for the most part, you have somebody who you need
Everyone
to
else
defend.
can swarm the ball.
Like, look, they are first graders. The amount that you can actually control or a referee can control what's going on is extraordinarily small. And the amount that coaching actually matters is extraordinarily small. But
that's an indication you lost the game.
The places that you can influence the game is who you match up the wristbands with. And I'm like fucking pop with the wristbands. Like I will look and I will see which of the kids on the other team is like, I'm like, okay, this kid, like I'll watch them in warm-ups a little bit and be like, that kid is clearly pretty good. I'm going to put one of our like stringent defenders on them. And we've got a few of those defenders. We've got some lockdown defenders. They might injure you. They might tackle you, but they will lock you down one way or another. The rules about stealing the ball and not being able to steal the ball, not going to follow those. So anyway, I have it all set up. I'm feeling good going in. The one situation that I cannot control as coach, because of course I can control everything else among first graders on the court, is somebody gets injured. That throws everything off with my defensive assignments. So the game has started. Literally the like first 30 seconds into the game, a kid on the other team gets injured. They put in their best player. I don't know that he's their best player before this, but they put in their best player. And I have one of the worst defenders on our team defending him. This kid goes off with no defense basically at all for like 12 points in the first quarter. I am livid on the sideline. I'm over there being like, because the thing that I hate the most is just one person just fucking running it against us, where I'm like, there's nothing I can do about it, and I look like the asshole. You know what I mean? Like, the reality is people expect me to be able to do something about it as a coach, but I'm not going to call a timeout if the kid is injured and somebody else comes in. I'm not going to call a timeout and be like, hey, like, can we switch these defensive assignments? That would probably be true psychopath behavior as a first grade basketball coach. So this kid runs it in the first quarter. Like, he goes off. Second quarter comes around. I get a pretty good sense of who's out there. Third quarter, and we're down by like probably 15, 16 points. I have no idea. I guess there's no free throws or threes. So we're down by an even number of points, but we're down by like probably like 10, 12 points. Second half rolls around. I've got this team scouted, just like dead on. And I'm like talking to them beforehand. I'm like, okay, this kid is going to do this. This kid is going to do this. You're here, you're here, you're here. Third quarter. So I had their kid who played really well in the first quarter. I have one of our hardest defenders. He gets injured in the very first play of the third quarter. Fortunately, I was able to replace it. And I will say, this is what I'm impressed with my dogs out there. We won the second half after we were able to get a sense of who the team was. We weren't screwed because of the injury. We won the second half and played very, very well. We fought, we came back. So I was pleased with the performance overall. I need to talk to them a little bit about using the backboard, which I talked to Mateo about after, and he was like, you want me to do what now? I'm supposed to shoot it where? Not into the hoop. And I'm like, nah, I know it's complicated. Look, I understand the logic of shooting the ball at a different place that is not straight in the hoop is hard to understand, but they put the backboard there for a reason. You should use it. So
you got to show him the video of, I believe it's in Korea, where players now specialize in banking in free throws.
Really?
Yeah.
I thought about that. I mean, the kids are not tall enough to be able to shoot off the backboard from the front of the hoop.
Yes.
To be able to get the ball up that high. But I was like, there is a place we want to get to. I'm like, it's simple geometry, kids. There's a place that you want to get to, and you want to use this part of the backboard. That's what you need to focus on. But for me, you
got to use this. Talk about the square, because the square is where you're supposed to aim.
Yeah, I've talked about it.
Oh, okay.
The amount of Mrs. Fantasy Genius was like, you should talk to them about this, about like using the backboard. And I was like, I have tried. The attention of first graders is as short as anything can be. So I was really proud that we fought back, and I got
Scott joke in there.
I got a little bit screwed, to be honest, in this game by the defensive injuries. So we went to 1-1 after 2 weeks. In the games that are not being, the score is not being kept, but everybody is keeping score.
Of course they are.
So this next week, I'm like, okay, I need to make sure that I have these defensive assignments on lock. There's nothing I can do with injury, but that was the thing that drove me fucking crazy. It's just sitting there watching this kid. Of course I'm happy. I'm like happy anytime any child makes a shot, but it's just like, we can't have it be that easy. We got to make somebody else score.
Yes. All right. Well, we'll stay tuned for further coaches corner updates throughout.
Most season. Importantly, I did not have to go on under the court and stop anybody. I guess I should say there was one other kid in the second quarter. I kind of yada over that one. But you know the tweet, it's Jordan Clarkson time. Jordan Clarkson.
Yeah.
That's like every player on the team.
Shouts to Robbie Callen, friend of the pod.
But there was a kid who was just like, he really was feeling himself in this quarter. He did not pass. It was like every single person on the sideline is screaming pass, including his entire family, me. I just had to sit back and be like, what, you know what I'm not affecting this in this moment. It's like, we'll have a conversation after that. It was like three people were defending him at certain points, and he was firing up shots. So it was like, it's Levi time. Levi. I think that about that tweet every single time any kid gets the ball and they're like, I ain't passing it. So be ready for a rebound, because this ball's not being swung around. So I had a fun time with that. And then after that, his dad came over and he was like, I just want to let you know, Levi didn't pass the ball, but he did pull down 13 rebounds. And I was like, dude, we're good. I'm fine. You don't need to justify. Like, he is a first grader.
You're not going to bench him?
Exactly.
You don't have the ability to do that?
Yeah. I was like, he is a first grader. I am unconcerned. I thought it was fun how little he was passing. I'm also on the high end of I don't think it's a lot of coaches think that their kids should be passing the ball. And I'm trying to win these games that they don't keep scoring. And I'm like, we don't need to pass the ball. If you have a good shot, just shoot it. If you could dribble around enough or run around without dribbling enough that you get open, just do that because like 85% of the passes are going to get stolen. So that's why I'm a little bit against passing sometimes.
All right, you heard it here first. Passing is
Look,
bad, actually.
If half of the passes were stolen, that's generous. If half of the passes that were thrown,
it's a fair point.
That were thrown in the NBA were stolen, you'd probably advise NBA players not to pass to you. All of a sudden, it would be Jordan Clarkson time.
Well, no, it probably would be. I was going to say Michael Jordan time, but that's probably the way to go. All right, let's get into the roundup. Starting with the Mariners, who agreed to a one-year deal with UW alum and Kentwood product Austin Voth.
There we go. Didn't we talk about this last week? Am I tripping?
No, we did not. It happened after the pod. Was not a player I was previously aware of. Were you aware of Austin Voth?
Absolutely not.
A fifth-round pick in 2013 out of UW, Voth debuted with the Nationals in 2018, spent parts of 5 seasons there before being traded to Baltimore during the 2022 season, has both started and worked out of the bullpen, exclusively pitching as a reliever in 25 appearances last season. Struggled at times with walks, including 3.9 per 9 innings last season. Also gave up 6 home runs in 34 and 2/3 innings, which is not great. Mariners eyeing him is a multi-inning reliever.
Trying to see where Austin Voth played children's baseball at.
If he was part of the same.
No, I would know if he went to Rock Creek. I would know who he was.
You want to know which rival?
I'm just curious. I mean, if he went to Kentwood, he had to have played somewhere around here.
One would think. We are drawing ever closer to spring training. Pitchers and catchers will report on February 15th. The full roster for the Mariners February 20th, and their first Cactus League game comes up February 24th. So almost exactly 1 month from now. The road weary and shorthanded Kraken have now lost 4 in a row after their 13-game point streak, including the opening game of their homestand Sunday against Toronto. They'll also host Chicago, St. Louis, and Columbus before the next road game next Tuesday at San Jose.
This is we've got an update on Austin Voth. Are you ready for it?
What's that?
Might be Italian.
Wait, what?
Yep.
Based on what?
Born in Redmond, Washington, son of Heidi and Ken Voth, has a younger brother, Colin, a cousin of former Oregon State pitcher who we have talked about on this podcast, Sam Gaviglio.
Ah, well, that's interesting.
And former current Los Angeles Dodger, Sam Gaviglio. He's like tangentially related to us, right?
Something like that, yes.
Wow, Austin Voth just shot up the charts.
I don't know. There's no evidence out there that he is Italian. Maybe it's Sam Gaviglio like half Italian or like
it could be a cousin on the other side. But still.
Yeah, I agree.
And any relation to Sam Gaviglio, we're happy about on this podcast. Any way that you could squint and find out that somebody's Italian. Look, you think Jerry DiPoto doesn't know that? The man has a way of finding Italians. If this would have been like 1940s baseball, this would have been a great strategy.
All the DiMaggios.
2024, I'm not sure if it's the best strategy.
Do you think we could someday get Jerry DiPoto on the pod to
talk about Italian baseball players?
Yeah.
I like the idea. There are some moments. If things are going well for the Mariners, yes.
We could get him on, or we would want him on.
We would want him on. We don't need Jerry DiPoto to come on here and answer for his sins. We need Jerry DiPoto to come on here and talk about Italian baseball players and be happy about it. This is the Sam Haggerty edition.
Because Jerry DiPoto is Italian, I blame everything on ownership and none of it on Jerry DiPoto.
There we go.
He's just out there taking the...
Our grandparents would agree.
They would also question Austin Voth's Italianness because his last name does not end in a vowel.
Gaviglio's brother Gus also started in Ash. I want to find out Sam Gaviglio's parents.
All right, Kraken getting some good injury news. Philip Grubauer is back from IR, was activated on Tuesday. They sent Chris Drieger back to Coachella Valley. Vince Dunn also due back after practicing on Tuesday, as did Matty Beniers, but Beniers' return is a bit farther away. He remains on IR. All right, Sounders FC headed to Marbella later this week, maybe tomorrow. Sounder at Heart reported that new designated player Pedro de la Vega will travel with the team after his transfer from Lanús was completed. The $7.5 million fee will apparently be the largest ever paid by the Sounders, with MLS reportedly handling the larger transfer fee when the Sounders added Clint Dempsey. All right, a newcomer for Seattle Reign FC, which has seen some subtractions to the roster this offseason. Korean reports indicate the Reign are signing former Chelsea midfielder Ji So-yoon, the all-time leader in scoring for the South Korea national team with 69 career goals.
Okay.
Ji was the FA Women's Player of the Year in 2014, her first year with Chelsea, and made the PFA Women's Super League Team of the Year each season from 2014-15 through 2019-20. G will turn 33 next month and saw her playing time decline in 2021-22, her last season with Chelsea, before returning to Korea to play professionally at home for the first time with Suwon FC the last 2 years.
I was paying so little attention, just literally reading about Sam Gaviglio, that I thought I thought this was a player who signed with the Sounders.
no, this is with the Red.
I got that. MLB
Yeah.
for life, Italian American MLB blogger.
I mean,
Team
nothing
Team
pulled up.
Italy reunites Sam Gaviglio and Joe Biagini in the 2023 World Baseball Classic. You could take the entire Italian World Baseball Classic team and have them play for the Mariners, and they would be the worst team in the league.
Look, we want to keep Julio. We want to keep certain players.
No, I'm just noting, like, that's why it's not the best strategy.
Oh,
but I feel like if in the DiMaggio days you could have done that, like, you could have had a solid squad.
I agree. All right, WNBA free agency started Sunday, all quiet as yet for the Storm. Players can't officially sign until February 1st, though we'll probably hear some updates before then. The most relevant Storm news to date, the Los Angeles Sparks placed their core designation on Jordan Canada last Saturday, the last day that they had to do so. My ESPN colleague Andrea Carter reported that Canada will seek a sign and trade. We mentioned her return to Seattle as one possibility as the Storm look to add a veteran point guard after not really, after Sammy Whitcomb started at the position last season. So stay tuned on that, although it would probably cost the Storm a draft pick now if they were to add Jordan Canada and bring her back.
So what does that mean, the core designation player? Is it a first-round draft pick?
It's not a specific thing. In this case, you're not allowed to negotiate with any other teams. It's more akin to the exclusive franchise tag in the NFL, but like realistically, the price has varied a little bit in terms of how much teams have.
Not a specific thing. How can that even be a rule? Just vibes?
Like, you're not allowed to talk to other teams as a free agent, but like WNBA players have enough leverage, but particularly most of the players who are franchise players. Like, this is why it wasn't necessarily a big deal that the Storm didn't core Brianna Stewart last year. That, like, the way they viewed it, or didn't have the core available because Jewel Lloyd was still taking it up. Like, the way that it has been is, like, if you want to play for another team, you just threaten to sit out the season because you don't make that much money in the WNBA. It's a very credible threat. It's not like when the Seahawks cored Frank Clark that he could be just like, oh yeah, I'm going to go home and sit out the season. So that's the big difference. But like, realistically, the reason that the Sparks use the core designation here, the reporting is somewhat similar on the Mystics and Elena Deladon, is like so that they can get something in return and the player can go to where they want. So I would estimate it probably will take one first round pick to get Jordan Canada. I don't know if you feel like that would be worth doing.
That's actually great that you asked me. I'm kind of an expert on this sort of thing.
You had strong takes on the Courtney Vandersloot trade.
Well, it was a horrible trade, but that's fine. What about Jordan Canada? Do you think, I'm going to turn this back around on you because you actually,
wow, that's great podcasting.
Do you think that Jordan Canada is worth a first round draft pick?
I'd
and
say,
what year would it be?
So, I mean, you can trade up to 2 years in the future. So it obviously wouldn't be this year's number 4 pick that they would be willing to offer in return. So it would be either 25 or 26. It kind of depends what you think the chances are, as we talked about last week, of Caitlin Clark and the other stars entering the draft this year. If they do, then the 2025 draft no longer looks so strong. 2026 doesn't look super great either. So that's a little safer because you don't potentially trade the Caitlin Clark pick, and because the Storm are coming into 2025 with this, kind of lower record from this year in the 2-year WNBA lottery. So I think they expect that they're probably going to make the playoffs next year, but if they don't, you would like to take advantage of that. So 26 is probably the better pick to trade.
I'm having a hard time seeing how the Storm are going to become a championship competitor again, and maybe everybody in the league is in that position.
I think it is realistic. It is plausible, at least, that they could sign a star level player in free agency this summer. And if you sign this summer, this winter, this month, if they were to sign
the Royal Summer,
the Australian summer, I think Jordan Canada might be playing in Australia. That was the photo on our ESPN story about this, where many Storm players are playing. Jade Melbourne, Mercedes Russell, Sammy Whitcomb, all playing in Australia. If say you traded for Jordan Canada and signed another star player, I think then they could be a top 5 team in the league next year. And I don't think that's an unrealistic scenario.
Who is that player? Are you teasing this based upon knowledge or?
So there's a group of players that, like, when I was looking at the mock-off season, I was like, we got a chance. Jonquel Jones, it was reported today that she's planning to re-sign with the Liberty. She was probably at the top of that list as a former MVP. Neko Ogwumike, Jordan Canada's teammate, is also on that list as someone who's only played in LA.
Alabama.
I don't get it. Has only played in LA, but the Sparks have been non-competitive for several years. We don't know whether her sister Shanae is going to continue playing for the Sparks in future years. And the Sparks have kind of one of the worst setups in the league in terms of facilities. The Storm have their brand new practice facility coming online. That's going to make them attractive to free agents.
Why do the Sparks have bad facilities?
Their ownership, which is shared with the Dodgers, has not invested very much in the Sparks.
They just have to displace some Mexican immigrants.
They're spending all the money on Shohei Ohtani in years down the road.
They've been looking around for people to displace for new facilities. Can't find them. Do you not know this about Dodger Stadium?
I am aware of that. It's
okay.
not.
You make it seem like I'm like.
It's not the current Dodgers ownership's fault. This happened in the 50s.
Still.
That's not. There's plenty of open space in Los Angeles.
We have to be mindful of Dodgers ownership on the Peltoncast. What if they're listening?
Elena Delle Donne, it has been reported, will potentially seek a move away from the Mystics. She was another core player. I don't, it doesn't seem very likely. Seattle, it's pretty far from her home base on the East Coast, but that's not inconceivable. So this is the group of players. I might be forgetting someone off the top of my head here.
So are you saying basically they should, if they're able to sign one of these players, then you make the trade for Jordan Canada?
Exactly.
It's a domino thing. You do that, then you make the trade for Jordan Canada, you make the pick, then the Storm are a competitive team again.
And it may be a situation, like the Kawhi Leonard and Paul George trade. Skylar Diggins-Smith obviously is another big time free agent who the Storm could add. In that case, she would be at the position that Jordan Canada plays. So that doesn't particularly make sense. But
that Paul George Kawhi Leonard trade will really work out this trades will work out in 6 years.
As soon as they can get the third star.
Just wait.
Down the road.
Requires a little bit of patience.
Yeah, so I guess Candace Parker probably isn't quite at that level. DeWanna Bonner, Brianna Jones in Connecticut, the other top free agents who have some chance of changing teams. But that's the group. If you get one of those players, then it starts to become reasonable to trade a pick because you have an expectation you're going to be good enough that pick is going to be at the end of the round.
Do you think that's greater than 50% likelihood, or?
I can't estimate that. I know that I struck out on all of these free agents in the Room Stats mock-off season.
But if they do strike out, then they should just tank for another season.
I don't know that necessarily means they should tank for another season, but they shouldn't be trading away draft picks in that scenario.
Develops, you give them away for nothing.
I mean, one of the nice things about trading for Courtney Vandersloot is if they get Jordan Canada, the core, she doesn't necessarily have to take the super max, but it it guarantees her a deal with the Supermax. Courtney Vandersloot is making less than the regular max because she took a discount to sign in New York. So I was kind of getting her at a bargain price in that trade.
So, but she's just not happy there, or what is the issue?
No, that was a hypothetical. Courtney Vandersloot is not actually likely to go anywhere.
Oh, okay.
This was our mock-off season. I don't think she's an option.
The second you start a mock off season, transactions have to happen. It's like one of those things where it's like, if you're going to do the exercise, you might as well transact.
Well, as I explained, the idea there was to improve New York's perimeter defense by replacing Vandersloot with Natasha Cloud, who's a much better defender.
Can I ask you one basketball related question?
Okay.
I saw the very end of the Blazers game today.
I did not see this. I've just read about it on Twitter.
What is your take based upon what you've read on Twitter?
Like, was it like about their protest or?
Yeah. Does the protest seem? I mean, has a protest ever been upheld before?
Protests have occasionally been upheld. There was one in like 2009, I believe, involving the Hawks and the Heat, I want to say. It has to be a misapplication of a rule. The referee's not awarding Chauncey Billups the timeout he tried to call is decidedly not a misapplication of the rule. So I would say that no, there is no chance. It does not pass the any chance rule.
This is like a Pete Carroll throwing the challenge flag type of protest.
Yes.
It's for show. Okay.
They're having Chauncey Billups' back here because they did change the narrative a little bit on it.
Do you think Chauncey Billups did something wrong?
He got 2 technicals with them leading by 1 point in 15 seconds left of the game. Yes, I would say he did something wrong.
That's like me in the first grade basketball game. It's like
I would say that was a costly technical. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander apparently missed one of the 2 free throws. So they only tied the game, but not great.
He ran on the court with 7 seconds left in the quarter, but it was to stop his child from hitting somebody. That actually happened. There are no technical fouls awarded.
Not in an NBA game. All right, should we get to UW women's basketball?
There were some moments. If we would have been sitting close enough in that Blazers game, that I would have been nervous.
Then Tay would have run on the court.
He would have run on the court. It's happened at baseball games before.
It's happened after a women's basketball game with Iowa the other day.
Yeah, not Mateo.
Many people ran on the court there. Did you see though also that there was an individual who interrupted a men's college basketball game?
Like they just ran out there?
This individual was in a wheelchair, so they wheeled out to center court. I believe they were wearing an "I Love MILFs" t-shirt.
This is the fun kind of interrupting basketball games.
No players were harmed.
I believe they were wearing an "I Love MILFs" t-shirt. I've never Googled anything faster.
I don't know what the search term was because I love MILFs college basketball. That could be fun. Did you pull this up here?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Texas State, Arkansas State.
Yeah. It was not the most marquee game of the weekend. All right, UW women's basketball.
Oh no.
Ongoing parallels between UW men's and women's basketball in conference play so far, and not great for either of them.
Oh no.
Both teams last weekend, really solid outcome in the first game of the weekend, and then those vibes dissipated with the second game. UW women snapped a 4-game losing streak at their first win of 2024 on Friday night at Heckhead when Lauren Schwartz's layup with 2 seconds left in a tie game produced the final margin after Arizona missed a potential winning 3 at the buzzer. Schwartz redeemed herself after 1 of 13 shooting before the final layup, while Ella Ladine scored 22 points and Hannah Steins with 16 to power the UW offense. But the good vibes were short-lived as the Arizona State got its first win in Pac-12 play at the Husky expense on Sunday. Jalen Brown scored 34 points on 11 of 20 shooting for the desperate Sun Devils, who saw 3 starters play all 40 minutes in this game. Steins had 20 points for UW. The Huskies now 2-4 in conference play, and the road gets harder next weekend as they visit the LA schools, currently ranked 2nd and 11th. UCLA is number 2, the highest ranking in school history, but that vote came before Monday's overtime loss at number 20, Utah. Bruins did manage to win at number 3, Colorado on Friday. They're led by Stanford transfer Lauren Betts, who's averaging 15.4 points, 8.6 rebounds after coming off the bench as a freshman for the Cardinal. Fifth-year guard Charisma Osborne is a first-round WNBA draft prospect, and sophomore Kiki Rice is a third outstanding player. They also have Jaime Jaquez Jr.'s sister Gabriella as a sophomore growing into a larger role, averaging double figures this year. USC went 10-0 in non-conference play, including a neutral site win over number 7 Ohio State before losing their Pac-12 opener at UCLA. They won at the Galen Center in the rematch between these two teams, but then lost both games of the difficult mountain road trip. Freshman wing Juju Watkins, the clear frontrunner for freshman of the year, a legit contender for player of the year, immediately one of the nation's best players, averaging 26.1 points and 7 rebounds per game. So you want to make sure you have your draft pick in 2027 when Juju Watkins could be in the draft.
Great. Done.
UW men's basketball.
Wait, okay, I finished this, but I have a revision.
Okay.
I'm just really not having fun. I just want it to be clear. I am really not having fun here. But I just realized when you were talking about UW men's and women's basketball, which so I think the moment that I have to go back to is now Friday, December 29th, when UW was leading Colorado, right?
Oh, yeah.
On the road. I think like halftime of that game, something like that.
I think they took the lead in the second half, if I recall correctly.
Or yeah, so the Arizona, the fateful Arizona Oklahoma bowl game. Arizona's winning. They just kind of pulled away at the game. I flip over. I'm watching UW basketball. They're up by like 8 or something. I'm watching it on like an illegal stream because that game wasn't televised, or it was televised in something weird. And
on the Pac-12 networks, I think.
I don't think it was. I don't know. I don't know why I would have. But that moment that I clicked over, I'm like, wow, that was fun watching Arizona win. I'll never have to think about these players transferring to the University of Washington because we're set. And then I was like, UW's going to beat Colorado. This is a monster win. This team's going to the NCAA tournament. So that was the moment. That's what I wanted to revise the moment to. That was the last time that I felt generally content with Seattle sports. So halftime, I'm going to call it halftime because it's simpler. If we want to be exact, probably like it was honestly like the 5-minute mark of that game. So yeah, that's what I can go back to as the last time that I felt content with Seattle sports. And now
let me double check the when was the time the Huskies win probability peaked in the Colorado game.
Good. We want to, oh God. We want to pinpoint the exact time.
Oh, there you go. It was 5 minutes and 45 seconds left. They got up to 80% win probability in a game they eventually lost 73-69. So the UW men had a thrilling moment on Thursday with Moses Woods' game-winning 3 at the buzzer at Cal. I told you in the group chat, the Carcino family group chat, that I felt nothing. But you said you were very much excited about this one.
Oh, it was fun. You can't tell me. Anytime you get a game-winning 3 like that, that's fun.
Huskies led by as many as 11 in the second half, but then Cal went on a 10-0 run to take the lead. Huskies were down 4 with 31 seconds left, but Anthony Holland made a key 3-pointer with 24 seconds remaining, and Ferdows Amok missed 2 free throws, giving UW the opportunity to win. Wood, much like Lauren Schwartz the next night, was 107 on 3 before making the game winner. Big game for Anthony Holland, who had 4 threes off the bench. But still, the Huskies settled for another split after a loss Saturday in Palo Alto. Really a make or miss game for them in a 90-80 loss to Stanford. The Cardinals shot just 48% on Tuesday, the Huskies 56%, but went 13 of 24 from three-point range, including a career high 8 for Spencer Jones, whose 30 points were also a career high. Huskies got 20 points and 11 boards from Keelan Brooks Jr., 18 from Wood, while Wilhelm Breidenbach started again at center and had his first career double-double with 12 points and 10 boards.
He never had a double-double in Nebraska?
He didn't even come particularly close.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah, no, he didn't play that much at Nebraska. Like, Wilhelm Breidenbach has really been the revelation of the season for the Huskies, but obviously they continue to miss Frank Kepnang, who still has not played. in conference play. I believe the Gonzaga game was where he got injured, right?
That sounds right.
If you're pinpointing the high point of the UW men's basketball season, the very last second against Gonzaga, it's all been downhill from there. UW now heads home badly needing at least one win and maybe to sweep the Mountain Schools, who both come in 5-3, part of a 3-team tie for
One win.
fourth in the
What does
Pac-12,
for what? They need one win to get where?
just to stay alive.
You
Colorado.
never know how you're going to feel about something until it happens. And I never imagined how much I would hate this UW basketball team. Actually, I did imagine that because I've hated many in a row. But like it really felt promising.
It did.
They beat Gonzaga. And that's the thing. Nobody can take that away from them. You know?
Continues to take away from them.
I will give Mike Hopkins credit. Long after he is hopefully gone as head coach, I will give Mike Hopkins credit for beating Gonzaga.
I guess I was going to say Gonzaga continues to take away from that, but they did move up in Ken Palm after a pair of lopsided wins over Pepperdine and San Diego on the road last weekend. Not a great year for a guy, Lorenzo Romar, who's 9-12 this season. And Javon Porter has not developed as I was hoping this year. He was really quite promising as a freshman, but hasn't played much this year. All right, Colorado 5-0 at home in Pac-12 play, but 0-3 on the road, including a 47-point loss at Arizona and losses to Arizona State and Cal.
Really, Pac-12's going out with a bang. Some of these losses.
Just so Pac-12. Likely lottery pick Cody Williams did not play in the first two of those games, but has been back for the last four, averaging 17 points per game. He's got a chance to be the number one overall pick this year. Buffaloes will also have senior big man Tristan da Silva, your favorite, who missed the mass matchup between these two teams in Boulder. Utah also 5-0 at home, 0-3 on the road in conference play. They did have a true road non-conference win at St. Mary's, something Colorado can't boast. Colorado has not won a road game all season. They've only played four of them, so certainly they've got a good chance to get it at UW.
You know that it's going to be UW, right? If a thing has not happened all season, just wait until it meets Mike Hopkins. Like, that's how this works.
The Utes at least lost at Stanford instead of Cal, doing so without senior guard Rolly Worcester, who also missed last weekend's home sweep of the Oregon schools. Without him, Davon Smith has done a terrific job at point guard, averaging 16.3 points and 9.8 assists over the last four games, and recording a triple-double at Stanford with 16 points, 11 assists, and 10 boards. They've also been without 7-footer Lawson Lovering, who missed the last weekend's games after leaving the Stanford loss in the opening moments. The other player to watch is obviously 7-footer Brandon Carlson, who had 34 points on 11 of 18 shooting when these two teams played in Salt Lake City. So there you go. All right, UW football.
Remember when we did percentage chances of victory a few times?
We did. We're not doing that now. The Huskies, 2-0 surprise, announced three more assistant coaches after we recorded last week, all coming with Jed Fish from Arizona, those being offensive coordinator and offensive line coach Brennan Carroll, son of Pete, wide receiver coach Kevin Cummings, and cornerback coach John Richardson. They still have not chosen a defensive coordinator or linebacker coach, and I think have at least one more full-time coaching position available on top of those. Because actually I said John Richardson is cornerback coach. He's secondary coach at UW. He was cornerback coach at Arizona. So, they have some positions left to fill, which potentially could go to the holdovers from Kalen DeBoer's staff, including the co-defensive coordinators, William Inge.
Kind of interesting
Chuck
that
Morrell.
There's been no announcement about them at all.
Yeah.
That they're kind of, I thought did generally a pretty good job. If the players that they coached are fairly desirable in the transfer portal overall, like there are players going to pretty good schools in the transfer portal, then they must have been doing something right. And they have players who are going to be drafted relatively high in the draft from that defense. Like, I would be very happy if both of the co-defensive coordinators came back.
I would agree with that. It looks like Arizona under Brent Brennan is hiring Dwayne Akina as defensive coordinator, so that's not going to be an available position. He was previously an analyst at Arizona.
You're saying for William Inge?
Yeah.
I I mean, they might be waiting around for Michigan, which
I
looks like it's going to open.
I don't know that they should be waiting around for that necessarily, though.
I don't think I don't assume that they are. I mean, who knows? Maybe there's some sort of conversation with it's definitely not defensive coordinator at Alabama. It just doesn't really make sense to me why a week has passed and nothing has been figured out for that.
It seems likely that that many of them will stay, but we'll see. We will
I
see.
also think that could be a helpful thing with regard to
Retaining players from the current roster.
retaining players, and then also just going out and getting more players as well.
All right, now I guess we should talk about the quarterback position for UW. So Noah Fafita, Tetaroa McMillan, and Jacob Manu, all the group of players that were all, as we discussed last week, from Servite High School as part of Jed Fish's first full recruiting class at Arizona, or second recruiting class at Arizona. They all announced their intention to stay there and not seek transfers. So Noah Fafita will not be the UW quarterback. And the domino from that, Will Rogers withdrawing his name from the transfer portal, deciding to stay at UW, and now the favorite to be the starting quarterback this season.
And basically the chatter when they went back to Arizona was that they were considering an offer from Alabama. And if that would have happened, I don't think I could have gone on. I think that would have been it. That would have I'm sure that I would still pay attention to college football, but that would have been such an all-time gut punch to have those players, to have Kalen DeBoer leave and then take those players to Alabama. So to me, this is kind of like splitting the difference. And at the same time, Noah Fafita is a more promising quarterback than Will Rogers. I think we can all agree on that. Having Will Rogers come back is a pretty huge deal for the University of Washington, having an experienced quarterback. And as time passed, and especially when they announced they were going back, I wasn't shocked by the news of Will Rogers coming back.
No, I don't think anyone should have been.
It made sense for Will Rogers to enter the portal, see what was out there. A lot of teams have just already found their quarterbacks. I'm sure there were places that he could have gone, but Will Rogers was set in Seattle while most quarterbacks were looking for most colleges were looking for their quarterback. So a lot of teams are just set there, and it's kind of like it's going to be probably something worse than UW. There are a lot worse outcomes in the world than being the quarterback for UW with Jed Fish as your head coach. Ultimately, it is a good situation to be in as a quarterback. I think that's what people are kind of missing a little bit about this, and I'm viewing this in a rosy way a little bit, but Noah Fafita had played better at Arizona than Jaden Delora played at Arizona. Noah Fafita wasn't like an all-time recruit in the way that Tetaroa McMillan was. Noah Fafita was a 3-star recruit. And Jed Fish in his offense turned Noah Fafita. Obviously, these two things work in conjunction with each other, but having a good offense needs a good quarterback and vice versa. So I have faith and confidence in the same way that I did with Kalen DeBoer and Will Rogers, that Jed Fish can make Will Rogers a very good Big Ten quarterback. So I think it's a huge deal. People should want to play for Jed Fish and to play with Will Rogers as starting quarterback, as they're able to develop these quarterbacks behind them, which we could talk about in a second. I have no idea if it'll matter. Maybe you can revise your bold prediction to Damon Williams or whatever. We'll start more games than Will Rogers. But there's still such a reality with quarterbacks that after your starter, it kind of doesn't, it can matter, but it also, these players may never see the field at UW. So taking that much time to dwell on younger quarterbacks is a little bit of a fool's game to me. I think it's basically starting quarterback or nothing here. And that's what Will Rogers will enter the spring and fall as.
So I think a couple of things. Number one, just the importance of Will Rogers' experience, I think is pretty important for UW, especially in a situation where we'll see how much experience they have elsewhere, including particularly the offensive line, which is the biggest question mark, I think, right now. But the other element is, like you mentioned, Damon Williams Jr. replacing, who's headed here after originally enrolling at Arizona as a 2024 recruit. There's a big difference between Damon Williams Jr. playing as a true freshman with no college experience and Austin Mack playing after a year in Kalen DeBoer's system and taking snaps as the third string quarterback. There still would have been a huge experience difference between him and Will Rogers, but the difference between a redshirt freshman and a true freshman is still pretty considerable in that regard, I would say. And Will Rogers, like, just having played in SEC road games, like, he's prepared for what he's going to face in the Big Ten. There's nothing that's going to surprise him from that standpoint. So I do think it's a positive, even if I have some questions about, kind of his ability to make all the throws in a pro style offense like Jed Fish is going to run. So, I mean, it's unquestionably great news for the Huskies' 2024 chances.
It's just this whole experience has taught us a lot about silver linings. And all of a sudden, when it was like Will Rogers into the transfer portal, and I was like, fuck it, we're gonna get somebody better than Will Rogers. All of a sudden, Will Rogers coming back is like, thank God they got Will Rogers.
And like I said it in the Kalen DeBoer emergency pod, I stand by the parable of the Chinese farmer. Is it bad luck? Is it good luck? Maybe so. So many of these things. I think you made this point offline that, like, when Fafita decided not to transfer here, that these quarterback backup plans have a way of working out a lot of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for UW, the consolation prizes, right? We talked about Michael Penix Jr. We were looking for Jay Gaynor when Michael Penix Jr. transferred to UW. Michael Penix Jr. is like, oh, it was honestly a similar thing to Will Rogers, where we were like, well, he was good a couple of years ago with Kalen DeBoer, and then in a bad system and wasn't good, and he needs to stay healthy. And all of a sudden, he's number 2 in the Heisman.
Yep.
So I don't think you should have that as the base expectation for Will Rogers, but like,
I would definitely not have that as the base expectation for Will Rogers. But yeah,
it is
we'll
within
see.
a window of possibilities. I think people are underrating Jed Fish a little bit right now. And the thing that I noted to you was that I said this offline, right? The Arizona roster was really, really young, and the UW roster was very, very old. And just seeing how those two rosters interacted with each other, Arizona was all promise, right? That is all players basically that Jed Fish recruited. Jed Fish made Arizona in his 3 years there. And you really kind of can't deny that. Kalen DeBoer also, like, UW was not in a great place before Kalen DeBoer. But when you look at the core of the team, at this offensive line that we're upset about leaving, like, those are good offensive line players, and they've been developed over time. And having a brand new offensive line is going to be hard. Those aren't Kalen DeBoer's players, ultimately. Roma Dunze isn't Kalen DeBoer's player. Jalen McMillan isn't Kalen DeBoer's player. Like, the amount of players that Kalen DeBoer succeeded with who were already in the program because of Chris Peterson, and some of whom because of Jimmy Lake, was a huge portion of it. Was Penix coming in from Kalen DeBoer and a handful of other pieces. Jabbar Muhammad was a big one. Jed Fish built the fucking program at Arizona. Like, you kind of can't deny that. And if Jed Fish was able to do that at Arizona and get them to the place that they were beating Oklahoma in a bowl game in a very hard Pac-12, they were the third best team in a very hard Pac-12. There is nothing to me that suggests that he can't do that again. It's a little bit of starting over, but his ability to recruit and his ability to coach the players is apples to apples, maybe on the same level as Kalen DeBoer. And the fact that he had done once already makes me more encouraged going forward that he's able to do it again. So,
I mean, that's a challenge, is to do it again, because it's still relatively small sample size at Arizona, because he was only there for a few years. It was his only head coaching job, and it was the only job that he was in for that long. But
he might have brought the entire roster from Arizona, and we still wouldn't fucking know.
Right. All right. Well, he did bring a few players with him from Arizona. Let's talk about the newcomers to the UW roster. We mentioned last week that Jonah Coleman was very likely to transfer here from Arizona. A 2021 redshirt who played as a backup at running back in 2022 before emerging as a star last year, averaging 6.8 yards per carry. He finished 8th in the Pac-12 in rushing EPA with a higher average and better per play and better success rate than UW's Dylan Johnson. Easily outperformed former starter Michael Wiley and backup DJ Williams, both of whom were only average in EPA per rush. Everything we say about running backs don't matter in the NFL in terms of, the success is more about the offensive line and the quality of your pass game. I don't believe that is true in college. And to the extent that, individual season is reliable, there's, like, Jonah Coleman looks very much like the real deal.
Oh, yeah. We have to be very excited about Jonah Coleman right now.
So a chance to start. Cam Davis is still on the roster, has not submitted a notification of transfer. Tybo Rogers has. He's new to the transfer portal since we last recorded. But, he looks like Coleman and Cam Davis look like the guys next season. Also, cornerback Jordan Shaw, who was an Indiana transfer previously set to join Arizona, a three-star 2023 recruit who redshirted last year by playing in 4 games for the Hoosiers. He started 2 of those, has all 4 years of eligibility remaining. This is an exciting one to get someone with some experience and 4 years of eligibility.
Massive.
And then also a couple of 2024 Arizona signings coming with Fish to Seattle. We alluded to this quarterback, Damon Williams Jr., who is a 4-star recruit, ranked 19th among quarterbacks by 24/7 Sports Composite, 2 spots behind UW early enrollee Demarcus Davis, who subsequently submitted his own notification of transfer. That made sense. You're not going to take 2 top-rated quarterbacks in the same class, and ultimately Fish chose Williams over Davis, who was someone who had visited Arizona.
A quarterback taking his guy, or a coach taking his guy.
Yeah,
he already knows Damon Williams. The idea that college recruiting rankings could know more than Jed Fish in this scenario is just like, it's fucking laughable. Like, these recruiting rankings are so absurd as they are. The idea that you can actually compare players like this in such wildly different situations, or what they're going to be translating from high school to college, is just like, maybe on a macro sense.
It's an inexact science for Jed Fish as well. But
the 2 spots is just like, who cares?
It's just to note that they're in the same ballpark, I think. Yes. Not that like 17th versus 19th actually
it's a downgrade, is what I'm saying.
Sure. Also, running back Adam Mohammed, who is a 3-star recruit from Glendale, Arizona.
Dash Byerly.
Hmm?
You don't have the Dash
Byerly. This is the quarterback in 2025 who is now committed to UW. He's a 3-star recruit. The 2025 is so far away, I don't think it's really worth discussing.
Jed Fish might not even be the coach when that NFL job opens up.
Let's see what conference the Huskies are even in.
I believe star quarterback from Arizona right now. He went into the transfer portal with one of the do not contact with the crystal ball. So we'll see whether that means it's UW or somewhere else. I think we'll know very, very soon. If it was him, he could be somebody that when you look at him and Jordan Shaw together, could be pretty huge for this UW secondary, and also could, assuming Jabbar Muhammad does transfer, could be pretty massive as far as replacing Jabbar, with Elijah Jackson coming back as well.
It seems like all indications are that Jabbar Muhammad is headed elsewhere.
Oh, I thought you were saying all indications were that Dakario Davis is coming here, and I was like, damn, okay.
Wait, I'm not seeing him in the 24/7 Sports. Where is he?
I don't know.
He had a crystal ball of UW, then he should be in there.
No, they didn't say crystal ball of UW.
Oh.
It's like he entered with the do not contact.
I see. Okay. Well, it doesn't seem like he's made it in their database anyway.
He led the conference with 15 pass breakups this last year, though. It would be a massive one.
I agree.
All right, so Pac-12 corner.
Husky players who have indicated where they're planning to transfer. We have Austin Mack, as you mentioned, and Jeremy Bernard both headed to, and Parker Brailsford, all 3 headed to Alabama to play for Kalen DeBoer.
Have fun. That's my advice to Jeremy Bernard. Jeremy Bernard going to his 3rd college in 2 years, or in as many years. It's just like,
I mean, he went from Michigan State and UW to Alabama. Like, I think Jeremy Bernard's doing pretty well for himself.
I just be careful. That's my advice to everybody involved, is to be careful. I just like Jeremy Bernard's going to end his career at San Jose State or something.
I think Jeremy Bernard's going to be just fine. Mish Powell is headed to Miami. This one hurts. Walk on at UW.
I love Mish Powell so much. You
like good for Mish Powell going to a place
that's the thing. That's the thing where it's like, I go to the U. Don't go to fucking Alabama. Go to the U.
And then
he will play there too. Like, Parker Brailsford is going to play at Alabama, which I'm sure you'll mention. Austin Mack, though, I'm like, dog.
Yeah, that one. Seems
are you
unlikely.
Sure about that, Austin Mack? Like, I know your coach went there, but your coach isn't going to be the same. Your coach is now. Alabama head coach Kalen DeBoer, not UW head coach Kalen DeBoer.
His coach is going to be the same. Kalen DeBoer remains the same person in Alabama or Washington. The level of the replacement level for an Alabama quarterback versus a UW quarterback is what has changed. But
This is the
let's not
school
be
that
too patronizing.
Jalen Hurts transferred from.
Okay, I don't see Tua on the roster.
How do you know Jalen Milroe isn't Tua? Like,
the point is that Jalen Milroe isn't going to be the starter for 4 years. Tua was younger than Jalen Hurts. You get that, right?
I will
You
be
get
very
that, right?
surprised. I will be surprised if Austin Mack. It's like he's not going to be the starter this year.
I agree that I will be surprised if Austin Mack starts more than a handful of games at Alabama.
To me, the over/under is 1/2 for Austin Mack starting.
But you said it earlier, like looking at the backup quarterbacks almost doesn't matter anymore because there's so much change at that position from year to year.
But at the same time, I don't necessarily begrudge any of these players for making the decision. It's a
you
little frustrating.
You can't.
The offensive
No,
lineman. But like,
I will categorically refuse to allow you to begrudge any of these players. You could be disappointed, but you cannot
begrudge.
They're their own people. They have their right to make their own decisions. Again, that's what patronizing means.
When they committed to UW to play for Kalen DeBoer. Like, I understand that.
Troy Dannon understands that.
Oh, I think Troy Dannon is a good AD, which means he's going to be gone. But can we just have UW? Can we just fucking invest? UW has the money. Why can UW not be the most important school on the West Coast, or the second most important school on the West Coast? It doesn't really make sense to me. The investment is there, the infrastructure is there. I mean, maybe we are, and we just need. Who knows about Dan Lanning? Whether Oregon has lost.
No, Oregon is definitely the second most prominent program on the UW.
But Oregon lost back-to-back coaches to other schools, did they not?
They only lost one, didn't they? Who's the other?
Did Willie Fritz get fired?
Oh, I guess Willie Taggart did leave for Florida State,
yes,
right?
Willie Taggart, not Willie Fritz. But so yeah, they had back-to-back coaches leave, similar to UW having back-to-back coaches leave. They just happened to land on a coach who decided to stay for now.
Yeah.
And maybe Dan Lanning will be there forever, and maybe it'll be good forever, but who knows? So I don't know. Maybe I'm talking myself into that. Everything's fine in UW. We just need to build up the program, and maybe Jed Fish is that guy. I just don't like the attitude of everybody being like, "Oh, well, I'm rescinding my own complaint about it. I take it back. Troy Dannon's going to be the AD for the rest of our lives."
I mean, again,
with head coach Jed Fish, we don't need to be worried about what everybody else is doing. We're fucking school in the Big Ten.
UW football has had 2 coaches leave for other programs. Those other programs were USC and fucking Alabama. And guess what? They fired 5 coaches since Don James retired. So
they also had an athletic director leave for USC.
Don't spend all your time worrying about the thing that happens 2 times. Spend more of your time worrying about the things that happens fucking 5 times. That's my number one piece of advice.
We had coaches leave for better schools than Oregon had coaches leave for.
The last
ACC schools, get the fuck out of here.
UW transfer to pick a destination. Ethan Barr, another one of the players who was already an incoming transfer, he's now headed to UCF.
Now, in this one, I do begrudge.
No.
I'm joking.
Not allowed to begrudge.
I'm joking at the idea of somebody who never did nothing at UW to transfer.
Barely set foot on campus.
I'm mildly excited about you, Ethan Barr. God damn it.
Admittedly, I was never that excited about Ethan Barr when I saw his stats.
Will Rogers, though. Will Rogers. I said he would be there on the Heisman podium next year, and I do not take it back.
A last bit of UW news. Starting right tackle Roger Rosengarten has declared for the NFL draft with 2 years of remaining eligibility, joining starting left tackle Troy Fautanu, with Brailsford headed to Alabama, and starting guards Nate Caleppo and Julius Bulow submitting notifications of transfer. It is possible that the Huskies will not return any starter from last year's offensive line, which would not be ideal. Not be ideal.
It's not great.
All right, anything else on UW football?
It's interesting to me that the coaching carousel, which I feel like has been longer than it's almost ever been.
Oh, yeah.
It's like it really just keeps going. And with the transfer portal opening up, I feel like at this point, what we need to cheer for is as many college coaches just getting other jobs, because UW just needs guys.
Michigan hiring some mid-major coach as their offensive coordinator if they do indeed promote Brennan Moore to replace Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, we need multiple tiers. I mean, Chip Kelly, as long as he's not getting hired in Seattle, go get a job in the NFL, Chip. That's where you belong, right? If you get UCLA opening up, Michigan opening up somewhere else, that is what we need right now. Just more possibilities. Texas has to have enough players.
I
Right?
know I came up with Brennan Moore. Sharon Moore is the offensive coordinator at
Say
Michigan.
Brennan Moore? That's because everybody's Brennan now.
That is true. Yes, everyone's Brennan.
I did that one. I think people were treating it like it's set in stone that Sharon Moore is going to take that job. You
think he's going to decline it, or do you think they're going to hire someone else? I think when you've coached like half of the games and your team won the national championship, they're probably going to make you the head coach.
I don't know if it's set in stone that it'll be Sharon Moore.
Sure, I don't agree that it's set in stone. I agree that it's not set in stone. I think
it's
very likely.
I don't really know who it would be at this point, and we're just so far along in the process.
Well, there's some concerns from the boosters at Alabama about Kalen DeBoer. Maybe he could get ahead of that by taking the Michigan job.
Yeah, what's his buyout right now?
Has he signed the contract, or is it just a memorandum of understanding?
The reality is, I wasn't worried about the Michigan job for Kalen DeBoer, and now in hindsight, I would be worried about the Michigan job for Kalen DeBoer. Like, he might have been gone one way or the other.
Maybe so.
And maybe it would take a Kalen DeBoer. It just, for some reason, the only super, super desirable coaches happen to be coaching in the Northwest to big programs. It's very strange. So that's what we want, though, right now. So we want Jim. I think Jim Harbaugh to the Chargers is basically a done deal.
Unless
that was incredible. That was an incredible tweet. I don't even know if there's truth to it at all. Like, it's only the one report, right? From
it was Tom Pelissero that reported it, wasn't it?
Oh, I thought it was Mike Florio. Was it Tom Pelissero? But like, that's the only post that we've seen about it. I think it's done with Jim Harbaugh, though.
It does seem that way. It seems more that Pete Carroll wanted the Chargers job. Let's see. No, I guess that was Mike Florio, wasn't it? Huh.
I think I underestimated. This is why people should know why USC is such a desirable head coaching job. The Chargers are set up in a nice way, or whatever. Being a head coach in the city of Los Angeles is a pretty nice setup.
Mike Garafolo reported that the Chargers and Harbaugh are within striking distance of a deal. So that
I think it's basically done.
All right, let's transfer here to talking.
But do you understand what I'm saying? Like, the Chargers are in a nice place. They've got a good young quarterback, but being a head coach in the city of Los Angeles is it's up there with the most important things. Like, for Jim Harbaugh to have left Michigan after winning a national championship, I think it takes a unique situation, and I think it takes being in LA. Same with Pete Carroll fighting for it. We haven't heard Pete Carroll's fighting for the Falcons job. We haven't heard that Pete Carroll's fighting to be the coach of the Titans or whatever,
Yes, LA is a very desirable city in which to live, it turns out. Thanks for the update.
I want to go to there.
So let's start with the one bit of Seahawks news that actually has transpired, which is that former offensive coordinator Shane Waldron has taken the same job with the Chicago Bears. We talked a lot about it this season. Waldron was maligned, I think, at a lot of the season by Seahawks fans because of their woes on third down and the, kind of inconsistency of their offense. And then you looked at like the tape people and they all loved everything he was doing. EPA was great. Like, all the objective indicators seemed to indicate that Shane Waldron was a very good offensive coordinator, if not necessarily the kind of star or personality who made sense as a head coaching candidate for the Seahawks.
The offenses were never quite good enough for him to be head coaching candidate, which is the reality that we're talking about. It's like, a lot of this shit is just luck.
No, yeah, right place at the right time.
It's pairing a pretty good coordinator. Like, I guess the margins for being a good coaching candidate and for being a like neutral or fine coaching candidate are basically, do you have a star quarterback? right? Like, and this is no offense to Bobby Slowick, but like, did Bobby Slowick make CJ Stroud or did CJ Stroud make Bobby Slowick? And that's kind of where you end up at is
Well, did Jared Goff make Ben Johnson, or did Ben Johnson make Jared Goff?
the Lions are objectively a very talented offense.
Yes, I did have the thought during the game on whatever day it was they played last week. I can't remember. Like, is Amon Ray St. Brown really the reason that they're
Amon
this
Ra.
good?
I,
I know how to pronounce his name. I just could not get it out for some reason.
but
Amon Ra St. Brown.
they have invested a lot on offense overall. I mean, they've had a lot of picks, but like Amon Ra, I mean, also when you land an Amon Ra St. Brown in the 4th round, that makes everything else easier. We kind of talked about that.
Yeah, then you can afford to spend a first round pick on Jameer Gibbs.
I mean, you still should have, but they could. Anyway, I think Shane Waldron is great. I mean, DVOA wise, the Seahawks have been pretty solid offensively during his tenure. You know, there were times when it felt like they got away from some of the motion offense, but I also, at the same time with coordinators, this is Pete Carroll's team. This was Pete Carroll's team. And it's impossible to say.
Like, when you look at the expectations for this team offensively after they traded Russell Wilson, like,
yeah. No, I think
like,
Shane Waldron
people thought they had the
awesome
worst quarterback room in the league going into the 2022 season, excluding nobody. And then
it would be very funny to look back at some of the quarterback rooms that people thought that Geno Smith was worse than. Definitely one of them included Zach Wilson as a starter.
Oh, it sure did.
But I think Shane Waldron is great. I'm so excited for Shane Waldron to have ended up in that situation where they're probably going to have Caleb Williams plus another star in that offense. I think they go offense with both those picks. Like, I'm just happy for Shane Waldron. He's going to be a head coach in this league.
DJ Moore too. I reflected back today on I've mentioned it many times on this podcast, but the halftime in Indianapolis of week 1 of the 2021 season, when the Seahawks were cooking the Colts on their way to an impressive road victory. And like, they were doing all the things, they were using motion, like it was everything we wanted to see, at snap motion in particular. And Ben Baldwin and I met up at
we were like,
concourse.
D. Eskridge is going to be a monster in this offense.
It never got that good again. No,
we'll always have the first half of that game.
As much as they overachieved the last couple of years, we'll always have them.
Honestly, I think what you have to say is, when I saw the Shane Waldron news, I'm just not having fun as a Seattle sports fan. And see, that Shane Waldron game was right after UW got crushed by Michigan.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So I can't say that that's the moment that I felt most content, but I think I was thinking of this, I was reflecting on this, and I think maybe you have to go back a little bit further. And I was thinking February 1st, 2015. That morning, right?
The morning of the Super Bowl?
Of Super Bowl 49.
Did UW lose to Cal that day, the men's basketball game that was played earlier in the afternoon that I attended before coming to the Super Bowl party?
I don't know. I don't care. Was Lorenzo Romar the coach still?
Yeah, he would have been.
Lorenzo Romar was the coach. UW had just finished up their first season under Chris Peterson. We knew the direction was right. We were about to start things with a fresh young quarterback, freshman named Jake Browning, who subsequently did nothing wrong. The Seahawks were about to win back-to-back Super Bowls with a chance to be, nobody ever has three-peated, right? With a chance to be the first team ever to have three-peated. This was back before Richard Sherman was praising Brock Purdy. Like, so I think Shane Waldron, I'm happy for him.
I actually am pro Richard Sherman praising Brock Purdy.
Because you're all about getting the bigger extension for Brock Purdy.
I mean, yes, but that's number one. But number two, also, like, I appreciate Richard Sherman appreciating the value of quarterbacks.
Yeah, he appreciates the value of quarterback.
UW lost 90-88 to Cal in that game. Nigel Williams-Goss had 31 points on 11 of 17 shooting, played all 40 minutes.
Wait, didn't he transfer to Gonzaga?
Oh, he sure did transfer to Gonzaga.
Wow, another reason we need to go. That's actually the last moment before Nigel Williams-Goss. I don't want to go all the way back to before Dan Dickau transferred to Gonzaga. That's a little bit too far, but we still had Nigel Williams-Goss.
Yeah, I don't know. There's got to be a period in the 90s where, the Sonics were NBA championship. Oh, so the
Oh,
Sonics
we had a team.
existed. The Mariners had Ken Griffey Jr. and A-Rod
I
and
know.
Randy
I
Johnson
know.
and Edgar Martinez on the same roster. Like the Seahawks might not have been great, but that's still got to be the most satisfying moment, right?
And you know football, but no, I mean, of course you would go back to like, I don't know, probably like 96 or something like that. Like if dinosaurs roamed the earth, right? Ken Griffey Jr., Edgar Martinez, Alex Rodriguez, Sean Kemp, and Gary Payton all played sports in the city of Seattle. Like, and Joey Galloway was on the team, right?
Yeah.
Whew. So anyway, I think that was the last time that I was truly content.
Well, presumably the last time you were truly content was not after the Seahawks reported second interviews for head coach, which so far they have been reported as requesting second interviews with Ajiro Evero, Patrick Graham, Mike Kafka, Raheem Morris, and Dan Quinn, those being all four of the defensive coordinators they have previously interviewed in their first round, along with Mike Kafka. Not yet reported second interviews that they interviewed a first time. Ben Johnson, who is not eligible, as we alluded to, because the Lions have advanced to the NFC Championship game. The aforementioned Bobby Slowick, as well as Dolphins offensive coordinator Frank Smith, who I would say are probably the three coaches at the top of my list of the 8 they've interviewed thus far.
Yeah, that seems fair. Are we going to talk about this now, or do you want to go into your research?
You talk about generally the idea of hiring a defensive coach and why that bothers you so much.
I am so deeply convinced that the Seahawks are going to fuck this up. Like, and honestly, I think John Schneider just frittered away his legacy. Like, it's not just. I think John Schneider is about to fritter away his legacy, and the person who's going to be left laughing at the end of the day is, you know what? He's the person I want to cheer for. And it's Peter Clay Carroll. As always, this is how you win forever. He said, take my guy, John Schneider. If it's him or me, have fun with John Schneider. Because what John Schneider is going to do is just try to find Pete Carroll 2.0. And it seems like there's still some smoke around Dan Quinn. And the fact that he went back and interviewed all of these defensive coordinator coaches, like, to me, there's certain things that you can do as a coach, and there's a reality that ultimately players win games, and having good players is the most important thing, something that John Schneider also influences. I think we've come to the point that John Schneider is now the villain, maybe because he's left standing, but like, he's still signed off on that Leonard Williams trade. Pete Carroll doesn't make those trades. Leonard Williams makes those trades, or John Schneider makes those
Williams
trades.
did not make those trades. He makes defensive plays. I mean, yes and no. Pete Carroll had final say on everything. He overruled John Schneider hypothetically when they disagreed. I will say it is funny to me, like, if you said if Pete Carroll hadn't coached the Seahawks for the last 14 years and we hadn't had everything built up with Pete Carroll that we did, and you saw that list of candidates, and then Pete Carroll was also a candidate, you'd be like, oh my God, they gotta hire Pete Carroll.
Oh, I would rather them rehire Pete Carroll than any of these guys.
Like, have they considered it?
No, I would rather have Pete Carroll back than any of these coaches. The problem is, and I actually talked about this last year, the problem is Pete Carroll wasn't the worst possible coach in the world. It's just that there are better coaches out there. Hypothetically, we don't know. You know what I mean? Like, we can't tell. There are people who are more likely to put the team in a better position overall. I am generally convinced that I don't think defensive coaches make defenses better. I think players make defenses better. And I think the one place that you can influence the talent you have and that you can win a little bit more with the talent you have is on offense. Scheme matters more on offense. Players matter more on defense. I think that is how I view football. Or whatever. I don't know if there's a way to statistically judge this, but I will say there's a lot of pretty good defensive coaches who don't have very good defenses. So, and there aren't as many offensive coaches who don't have good offenses from what I've seen. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that. I mean, one of the things I come back to is, like, there was a period where, it seemed that, like, oh, everyone is just going to hire someone who happened to know Sean McVay. And then, like, you
They
look
all
back on
worked
that
out.
era. Like, unless you count Cliff Kingsbury in that, who does not belong because he might have been like friendly with Sean McVay, but did not coach with him or
No, he's
Kyle
not part of the
Shanahan,
McVay tree.
and brought an entirely different college style offense to the NFL. That shit did not work. Like, the other coaches were LaFleur, Zach Taylor, and Mike McDaniel. And like, maybe if you stretch it far enough,
Well,
the
Brandon
fact that,
Staley, but like Brandon Staley was the defensive coach.
yeah, no, I'm talking about offensive coaches here. The fact that Mike LaFleur, failed as Jets offensive coordinator, I guess, is one person from this
But
tree
that's
who's
what I was
unsuccessful,
saying
but not a
about
head coach.
coordinators is Michael LaFleur with the right talent probably is a good offensive coordinator.
And it's weird that like the one offensive coordinator that they have asked for a second interview yet, again, granted that they have not been able to interview Ben Johnson, is seemingly the least desirable and the one who has not come from this tree in terms of Mike Kafka.
I just am also like, are you really going to make Mike Kafka head coach? Because the times that things get pretty fucked up is when there's just, you go way left field with these hires. And in the same way, like Cliff Kingsbury was a way left field hire,
Had
right?
just been fired as a college coach at Texas
And
Tech.
there are a lot of coaches who are in the mix here who are not. I mean, Dan Quinn, I don't think has been told that he's not going to be back as defensive coordinator of the Cowboys. I think they're just waiting to see how this plays out. But
I think they would be happy to have Dan Quinn back as defensive coordinator if he doesn't get
okay,
a coaching
fair
job.
enough. But you look at the,
I mean, like, if you're going to overreact to the one game, you should overreact to it on offense and not on defense.
Brian Johnson also though was a hypothetical coaching candidate, not going to be back with the Eagles. Like, it would be good for somebody to bring in somebody that is guaranteed to have their current job because they're excelling at their current job so much. But so the places that you can influence the game as a coach is offensive scheme. We've seen it. You look at the teams that are remaining, the teams that went far in the playoffs, right? The coaches from that tree that you were talking about. Zach Taylor had his quarterback injured, but he still took the Bengals to the Super Bowl. They were one of the best teams in the league last year. And the year before this current one, before Jake Browning was their quarterback for much of the season. Matt LaFleur has done it now with two different quarterbacks, look pretty fucking good. Kyle Shanahan has had some down years, but is clearly an excellent coach and has an excellent offense when all the pieces are there. Sean McVay had this current Rams team. Like, this actually was the year that this was Sean McVay's most impressive season.
I agree.
And this was the first year where I was like, damn, Sean McVay is actually a good coach. Like I was always, I feel like I have begrudgingly accepted all of these coaches over time, but those are the coaches who've been left in the playoffs. And, it's either that or coaches who have superstar quarterbacks and know not to fuck it up with those superstar quarterbacks.
Andy Reid isn't part of this tree. He comes from his own very different legacy as kind of the last of the San Francisco West Coast offense coaches left out there, but he's very much an offensive coach.
When at the same time, but like, having a superstar quarterback also those are the teams that are left are teams with great schemes and teams with superstar quarterbacks, period. Right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how this works. So the Lions are a great scheme team. You look at most of the playoffs, it's either you have Josh Allen, you have Patrick Mahomes, or you have an excellent scheme and you have Bobby Slowick. Right? There aren't that many teams out there that are like, oh, they had a pretty good defensive coach. Like that's how you end up being the Jets. And I think DeMeco Ryans was probably a good hire in Houston, but at the same time, they won because of their offense, not because of their defense. And Bobby Slowick deserves a lot of credit for that. CJ Stroud also deserves a lot of credit for that. So if there are certain things that you can influence as a coach, which is more on offense than on defense, if you can't really influence defense that much as a head coach outside of talent, just go spend the money on talent and find somebody with a good offensive scheme, period. That's where it should end. But also, the other places that you can do it is influencing things like third down decisions. I was impressed with Todd Bowles.
Fourth down decisions.
Sorry, on fourth down decisions. Third down, too.
You can
punt anytime you want. Nobody ever talks about that. It's a decision to not punt on third down. That every punt is a turnover, for what it's worth. But influencing, making good fourth down decisions, doing the stuff like Todd Bowles did, going for 2 down 8, which ultimately I think Ben posted where it was basically like, statistically, this is just fucking noise. Like the fourth down is all that matter. And I sat there and I watched Todd Bowles punt away that game. And Todd Bowles, as a defensive coach, is going to have, similar to Pete Carroll, more faith in his defense. That is how this works. Overall, defensive coaches are going to have more faith and more confidence in their defenses than they probably should. And we saw it with somebody like, I mean, it's funny, Dan Lanning is actually so good at this as a defensive coach, but you see it with Kalen DeBoer. Kalen DeBoer is like, we need to score on offense right now. Like, I love the defense, love you all. You might not make a play. We need to go get this right now. We can't worry about getting the ball back. That to me is where a coach influences things the most, is through the scheme, through those decisions, and my confidence in an offensive coach and making those right decisions. It's our biggest complaint about Pete Carroll. If you're just going to find somebody who's like Pete Carroll, you might as well go get one of the best people in football in Pete Carroll. Like, we all fucking love Pete Carroll.
Like,
don't
if you
do this
hire-
again, Sean.
If you hire Mike Vrabel, it's just like a less charismatic, less fun Pete
No.
Carroll.
And he just looks like such a fucking asshole on the sidelines too. You're just like, I don't
I
want
think
this
that
guy
Mike
representing
Vrabel
me.
is an asshole.
No, I'm sure
don't-
Mike Vrabel is a fine person, but literally nobody, the intangible stuff at coaching, nobody in the league compares to Pete Carroll. Like, it's not even close. Pete Carroll is number one. Mike McDaniel, I will say Mike McDaniel. You get two, but of the
We're
just
not
like,
available.
God, be incredible. But of all the intangible things, like, it is Pete Carroll, it is Mike McDaniel. Nobody else is comparable to that. So to make the decision to fire Pete Carroll a good decision, you have to go find somebody who's not just Pete Carroll again. Because then what the fuck are we doing here, John? And that's, to me, I just feel that John Schneider is about to fuck this up, and he's about to become the villain for the last 15 years. Everything that went wrong, it's all on John Schneider's shoulders now.
So, I mean, I think the most important point here is the Seahawks haven't hired anyone. The list of reported second interviews thus far is not the
Give me
the
your
report-
argument for this.
The report also suggested there's going to be additional second interviews. And we said earlier, the Seahawks should cast a wide net, should talk to as many people as possible. The other situation here is, let's say, I don't necessarily think that this is going to happen because there's a lot of smoke about him to the Commanders. But if they hire Ben Johnson as a first-time offensive coordinator who's not going to bring necessarily, a defensive coach with him from Detroit, well, one of the things John Schneider has more power over now is he can influence the coaching staff below the head coach as well. So if it's Ben Johnson and we're picking between, Ejiro Evero, I mean, Raheem Morris and Patrick Graham have jobs. It's a little different. But, if Evero is going to be the defensive coordinator with Ben Johnson, then interviewing him a couple of times makes a lot of sense. So I'm not going to freak out that much until the Seahawks. Don't worry about the decision until the decision is made. There'll be plenty of time to worry about it once it's made. To your other point about defensive coaches and fourth downs, I decided to do some research here because I'm not content just having assumptions like you are. So with the help of NFL Fast R, the fourth down NFL program, everything that Ben Baldwin and his group has created, I went through and researched. So Ben's cutoff that he used a few years ago when he was charting this was decisions where going forward on fourth down adds at least 1.5% of win probability. So clear cases where you should go for it. And I decided to separate this out into offensive and defensive coaches based on the background of these coaches before they became head coaches, as well as special teams coordinators, which is mostly John Harbaugh, but not exclusively John Harbaugh. So what I found was very interesting. We have this data going back to 2014, and over the whole sample, offensive coaches have gone for it 44% of the time in situations where you should go. Coaches have gone for it 40% of the time. But if you graph it year by year, it becomes much more, and that's an average of year by year because I didn't want to overweight because it has been going up over that period. But if you look at it by year, it's actually much more fascinating because up through 2018, there was no difference between these two groups. Offensive coaches were 32%, defensive coaches were 31%. Since 2019, offensive coaches have been more likely to go for it on fourth down every year and often by substantial amounts. So from 2019 through 23 inclusive, offensive coaches have gone for it 54% of the time in advantageous situations. Defensive coaches have gone for it just 47.5% of the time. So I do think there's still an individual, it's important to talk to the individual rather than to just, again, make an assumption based on their background. Because Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, even though they are the best at presumably the best at creating an offensive environment and calling plays, they play super scared on fourth down as offensive coaches. So that's not a guarantee. But it does seem there's some
It's
evidence that
those two
offensive coaches are
being
more likely to go
conservative
for it.
is actually a positive for the stat overall, though, because it's still being weighed down by those two coaches. Which
Well, the
means that
point
the
is you
other
need to
offensive
talk to
coaches,
the coaches to make sure that they don't individually think like Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, and that they
you know what?
individually think like Dan
I mean, I
Campbell
guess
and Mike McDaniel.
that's true, but also like if you could have Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan right now, you're probably taking that.
I agree with that, but we're
There
not
are
hiring.
some trade-offs to the shit.
You're not hiring Sean McVay. You can't be guaranteed that if it's Ben Johnson or if it's Bobby Slowick or whoever it is, that they're going to be,
I
that
can tell
level of
you
offensive
right now
mastermind.
how Ben Johnson would approach fourth downs.
I'm
I
confident
don't
as
think
well.
I don't think he's like Dan, no, again.
I do
What
think
did Dan?
the 4th and 1 when they got it. Oh, it was so important that they got it because there would have been a lot of Ben Johnson dialogue after they
The
passed it on
field
second and
position,
third.
Dan. Think about it. I can tell you who probably is more concerned with it, and it's probably Aaron Glenn.
I do think if there was a defensive version of Dan Campbell, who's a former player and, hyper macho, and therefore comes at this fourth down more from like, we're going to impose our will, then the analytics say we should go for it here. Push up my glasses. Like, I do think that person could be very good at fourth downs. I agree with all your larger
You just
points.
made up a person, though.
But
I can make up any person. The stats backed me up. We did it, Joe. You said it yourself.
I don't think
Dan
Dan Campbell is aggressive on fourth downs because he's an offensive coach. I'll put it that way.
Mission accomplished.
I mean, the other point that Mike Dugar brought up in response to Ben Baldwin saying on Twitter that, he would exclusively be looking at offensive coaches for head coaching is that like this increases the bias in an already biased process because traditionally black coaches have been much more likely to have a defensive coaching background than an offensive coaching background. And to me, that's where it makes it very important to encourage diversity among offensive coaches.
Yes.
But you can't make that decision. You can't make your head coaching decision, which is only a sample of one, based on that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think the league has gotten better with regards to diversity, and it is good that like you look at the interviews that John Schneider did, and they interviewed 3 black coaches, right?
Yes,
for these in-person interviews. It wasn't just like Pete Carroll for show interviews, right?
Yes, and so to be clear, to satisfy the updated Rooney Rule, those have to be in-person interviews, which these second interviews can be, rather than just the virtual interviews that were the first round through last week.
But the bigger issue here, as always, is down through the ranks, where it's like the racism that happens is like, okay, we're comfortable with you being a defensive coach as the black coach or whatever, but not offense. And that's where the work has to be done in developing young black coaches into being offensive coaches.
The other thing worth noting here is the Seahawks have not requested an interview with Mike Macdonald, the Ravens defensive coordinator and a hot coaching candidate whose defense continues to excel. I have no possible explanation for why they have not done that. That to me,
Dude,
if you're going to quibble with the
right
process of the search, that to me is the number one complaint.
But they haven't scheduled a second interview with Bobby Slowick. They haven't scheduled an interview with Dave Canales. Like, they're fucking this up right now. You can see it happening in real time. I don't know why you're telling me we need to wait. Like, are they going to come from left field and be like, oh, somebody we didn't even talk to, they're going to hire?
Well,
this is
I think
Ben Johnson or nothing right now.
In the case of Mike Vrabel, I think that is a real possibility.
It's probably going to be Dan fucking Quinn. Like, just deal with it. Deal with it mentally right now. And then when it's not Dan Quinn, you could feel better. It's probably going to be Dan Quinn, and it'll probably be Chip Kelly as offensive coordinator.
I agree that we should expect that and keep our expectations low. But that's not the same as being upset about John Schneider preemptively for a decision that he hasn't made.
Dan Quinn and Chip Kelly as the fucking coaching staff.
Well,
just hire Pete Carroll. We just straight up, this is like Mike Hopkins again. I just don't know how John
Well, hopefully they won't at least extend. Hopefully it won't be that long of a contract.
It'll be like 20th in DVOA and make the playoffs. And
do you know how many coaches the Milwaukee Bucks are paying right now as soon as they hire a full-time head coach? Like, it can't be done. They don't have to worry about, well, they'll be on 3 because Bud's got time left on his contract, and now Adrian Griffin has 3.5 years, and now they're going to have a third head coach on top.
They're trying to win.
You know, the
you can't
Seahawks at least
deny that they're trying to
don't
win.
worry about having to reservice the debt at Lumen Field, so maybe they can fake it.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Great.
Like, I'm gonna find the positive here, whether you want to.
Funneling taxpayer money to
episode.
Seahawks. To Seahawks not having to pay debt to coaches.
My most content moment is when we're done with this podcast.
Really?
This individual podcast, not the podcast as a whole.
That's how we announce it's gone forever. Our 400th and final podcast. When you're done with this podcast, I'm just telling you, it's because you'd admit that I was right. That's why you're upset.
I'm just trying to go to bed. It's
I
late.
hung the banner. Wouldn't it be great if I had an actual banner?
I was right. It's just gonna say I was right.
No, mission accomplished.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
It also fits the mission accomplished because nothing's happened.
It's very fair.
Nothing's happened yet, but I am right about how to approach this. Same way that Ben on Twitter was. Hire an offensive coach, hire a first-time coach. Done. Period.
It's not like I disagreed that much. I mean, I don't know that it necessarily has to be a first-time coach. I just don't think there's that interesting offensive coaches who are not
offensive
first-time
coaches don't get fired that much. That's why they're all the defensive coaches.
I mean,
all of the coaches who are retreads or whatever are defensive coaches. Frank Reich gets fired. Frank Reich gets fired all the time.
You know, I really believed in Frank Reich after watching Hard Knocks in season.
Yeah, when he was praying his way through COVID or something.
He was vaccinated, okay?
Was he?
There's many players he acquired that were not.
He was just begrudgingly vaccinated.
I don't think he was begrudging. He seemed sincere.
I know
in his
that
message.
He
and his high degree of frustration with Carson Wentz.
Didn't he and Carson Wentz really like get close to each other through their mutual faith?
They did, but that was before there was any vaccination, differences in how it was handled by the NFL. So
that would be too much to ask for a head coach.
Well,
to not connect with the quarterback through their mutual faith. That's a step bridge too far to even think about. All we want is somebody who has an offensive scheme, please. And maybe not Chip Kelly. Just,
you know what? I am prepared to defend Chip Kelly's offense on this podcast. As the king of unpopular opinions.
How is UCLA's offense? Is it any good?
No, I don't think it's that great.
He also just is a legendary Oregon coach, Chip Kelly. Like,
I don't care about that. I can give a fuck about that. If it's good, if the Seahawks hire Dan Lanning, I'll be thrilled. I don't know if I will be thrilled, but I'd be okay with it.
It would be, you know what, if they were going to make a left field hire and it was Dan Lanning, because it also takes Dan Lanning away from Oregon.
And more people in the transfer portal.
Wow, this might be, let's get some momentum for this one. Dan Lanning rejected Alabama, but like,
I mean, Chip Kelly also provides that benefit.
Yeah, but this would be good players in the transfer portal.
Like it's good players.
Probably.
No,
Wow.
Let's wrap this up.
Let's get Dan Lanning. That's the only defensive coach I'm okay with. I mean, I will accept that Mike Macdonald is probably at the very least an interesting candidate.
If I gotta interview him, that's baffling. Like them not interviewing Dave Canales. I told you this offline. Like, look, they know Dave Canales, but they know whether they think he's good enough to be their head coach or not.
What is Mike Macdonald's background?
He was the Michigan defensive coordinator before Baltimore hired him.
That's so funny.
He went from Harbaugh to Harbaugh.
Next, attended the University of Georgia. He's got kind of a landing background. I'm not gonna lie.
All right.
I mean, if they were gonna hire a defensive coach, hiring somebody who's 37 years old, 36 years old, and who has some pretty proven success at many places, I think is probably the best possible approach to it. And that's why John Schneider is going to hire Dan Quinn.
And works under a coach who, until this year, has been very aggressive on fourth downs.
Has John Harbaugh been bad this year at that?
Oh, extremely bad.
What's going on? It's because their defense is so good.
Yes.
That is probably part of it. He's just like, but that's the one
it's
scenario
by far
where it's
the
like,
lowest percentage of fourth downs they should go for that they have ever gone for in this sample.
I'm not saying that you should ever not go for fourth downs, but when you have a defense as good as the Ravens, like you kind of can't begrudge John Harbaugh for almost anything at this point because they're
Also, they're usually
one of the best
winning.
teams in NFL history.
They're usually winning by like 4 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's just like, well, I mean, it would be better. You'll win either way, but it would be better.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll see what new we have on the Seahawks coaching search next week. Which players have chosen to remain at UW or transferred to UW? That's the update, or transferred from UW. And whether UW basketball seasons are, still alive for the NCAA tournament or not.
Great. I'm just not having fun.
This will not be the high point of Tristan's contentment. Thanks for listening to episode 400 of the Fabulous Peltoncast.
Woo! Sean Schneider retire, bitch. I guess.